Hey everyone, hello world. It's Dr. Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout and the Substack Outspoken. And I'm just jumping on StreamYard. I'm traveling, so I'm afraid my phone is the best we can do. But I wanted to talk about, day 8 or so of the coup against the United States of America, or what's probably the double coup, and give you my latest thoughts or analysis. But also in this chat, I want to warn about, now that Vice President Harris is going to be the nominee, or at least is being railroaded into being the Democratic nominee. I see a reflex, a pivot on the right among many conservative commentators who are attacking her, but attacking her in ways that I think will backfire. And I try to be nonpartisan. Daily Clout is nonpartisan. Bill Cam is nonpartisan. But I actually have to temper that because I do feel like the Democratic Party right now is a rogue party, a treasonous party. They're bypassing the Constitution. They allowed, it appears, a would-be deadly attack on the opposition. They're imprisoning their opponents, their critical opponents. They're planning to subvert normal, traditional voices of the people being heard through delegates at their own convention. And there's very serious questions. Actually, Emerald Robinson posted a really important tweet about this with a link to her show, in which she had someone who worked in admin in the White House talk about the auto pen. And I had tweeted about the auto pen from my own experience as a White House spouse and as a former political consultant to a presidential campaign and a vice president. Auto pen is a real thing. And she raised very serious questions about whether that was Biden's signature at all. She argued that the signature on the resignation letter, the letter in which President Biden said he was not going to continue aiming to be the candidate running for president nominated by the Democrats, that could well have been signed by an auto pen. She made the case that it was, if I understood her presentation correctly. And I agree. And that if that's the case, we don't even know if he intended to submit it, right? We're going to hear from the president tonight, allegedly at 8:00 p.m. He's finally going to speak to the world, the United States, his constituents, the people who elected him, the people whom he's representing, whether or not they voted for him. And just speaking as someone who's been around, White House processes for many years, granted 20 something years ago, but there are things that are not supposed to change in the White House. And a president vanishing for a week or 5 days and not giving any proof of life, not giving even a visual recorded statement of his reassuring the country and the markets and our adversaries and our allies of his well-being, of his life, right? Like no proof of life for 5 days. That is absolutely unheard of. It's not supposed to happen. And it's very dangerous. And you can see how dangerous, because as this palace coup has unfolded, and it's not over yet, and as you all know, I think there are actually 2 coups at work. And I just had an interview with Dr. Kirk Elliott, the gold and silver guy, and he also thinks there are 2 coups at work. A lot of thoughtful people do. And they're battling it out behind the scenes, and that's why things look so chaotic. But look what happened. Look what's happening in the world. Bibi Netanyahu landed in the United States for planned meetings with the White House, and no one, not the president, not the vice president, was there to meet him, because allegedly there was an argument about that because Mrs. Harris, Vice President Harris, wants to win Michigan, which has an influential pro-Palestinian voting bloc. I mean, we were humiliated in front of the entire world. Whatever you think about Bibi Netanyahu, whatever you think about Gaza, right? And there's plenty of tragedy on both sides. The the United States of America should be brokering that diplomacy, right? Should be talking to Netanyahu, talking to the Palestinians, talking to the Yemenites, talking to Saudi Arabia, getting people to sit down at the table. And instead, we have a drone attack on Tel Aviv, a drone attack on Yemen. People, things going up in flames, the Muslim world mobilizing, BRICS consolidating its power away from the United States dollar, very sobering developments. The outright kind of abandonment of confidence in the United States of America, economically, politically, as an ally, by many of our key allies and adversaries in the rest of the world. It is so dangerous. And the thought, like, I don't know if it's true, I wasn't there, but the report that, Mrs. Harris, Vice President Harris, wouldn't greet Netanyahu because she doesn't want to lose Michigan, that's treasonous, right? You're not supposed to sacrifice serving the people of the United States for narrow campaign interests. You're not. She's still the vice president, and the vice president's job is to do what the president tells her to do, or him. And for her to be even resisting that means, I mean, you've really got to understand how serious it is. Vice presidents hate always doing what they're told. They absolutely hate it. It's a very thankless job. It is the best job to set people up to run for president successfully. But to just say no, that is insubordination, a disruption of the chain of command of the most serious kind. And it's not just serious like gossip in the White House, gossip on the Daily Beast. It's serious like, look how fragile the world order of peace and stability, as crazy as the world is right now, it's not literally up in flames the way it could be. But it's going up in flames now because there's no one home at the White House. The United States of America, the world's superpower, is MIA. No one knows who's running the country. If you were to ask who's running the country, who's in charge, we may be too polite, or CNN or Time Magazine may be too polite to say who's in charge of the United States of America right now. But you can be sure that China, the CCP is asking that, and Western Europe is asking it, and Australia and Canada are asking, Latin America is asking. So much depends on the United States of America, and we don't even know if our president, may he live to be 120, as they say in the Jewish tradition. We don't even know if he's alive. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he'll show up at 8:00. Maybe he's shown up since I was, on my podcast an hour ago. But right now, it's not enough to hear a recording, or I'm sorry, to hear a voice message to Vice President Harris, I believe yesterday or the day before. That's weird, right? As Emerald Robinson said, they have cameras in Delaware. Why not just FaceTime? Like, where is he? Why not show his face, even if he's ill, right? I mean, FDR was in a wheelchair throughout World War II. He was ill, but he showed. I mean, he was disabled, but he showed his face. Even if President Biden is feeling really awful or had bad COVID, you have to show your face, because the American people need to know if the president's on a ventilator or had a stroke. It has massive national security concerns. And the fact that a handful of people are screaming and yelling about the national security risk of this chaos and this like abandonment of showing up by the president, and even for a couple of days the vice president, that is not the way it should be. We should all be screaming. The media should all be screaming, where's the president? Is he okay? And then for, I think, 2 or 3 days, where's the vice president? Is she okay? Right? None of this, no one should be speculating. And the other thing is some people like Colin Rugg were reassured that we saw President Biden, or someone who looks like President Biden, I guess yesterday, getting out of a limo and going onto Air Force One. I hope that's President Biden. I hope he's fine. I'm just going to note this is not a conspiracy theory. Body doubles are used sometimes with presidents and vice presidents. It's thoroughly confirmed. I mean, Hillary Clinton's body double has been interviewed, and it's reasonable. I mean, it's not great. I don't approve of it, but it's an understandable temptation because so much of what those people have to do is kind of waving from a distance. And if you can be signing bills or legislating or doing diplomacy rather than waving from a distance, it's tempting to have someone else show up for you and not schlep around all over the place. It's exhausting being president or vice president, physically exhausting, even if you're not 81 or however old he is, right? Or 60, which is, I believe, the age of the vice president. So I wasn't reassured because that doesn't mean it's not going to turn out to be him. We're going to know by 8 o'clock, presumably. Our world has been made a lot more complicated by AI and deepfakes, right? And this is not a conspiracy theory. It's just our reality. We don't know unless deep questions are asked, unless there's answers in real time, human beings to human beings, and some kind of spontaneity in the questions, in the checks. The press has to be able to see, the people have to be able to see. There's a reason that kings and queens used to show themselves to their subjects, like physically in their chariots, on podiums, going up and down the Thames. They had to show the people that they were alive, that it was okay, that they were healthy, because if they disappear, you get exactly this, which is palace intrigues. This is like all those Elizabethan dramas in which people are poisoning people and bodies are dropping down in like dark corridors because there is a power vacuum, and power vacuums are dangerous. Okay. And so the questions that some Republicans are asking, not nearly enough, is, and actually everyone should be asking this, it's not partisan. If the president isn't well enough to campaign, how is he well enough to govern? Right. And that is a really important question. And believe me, our enemies are asking it as well. All right. So we don't know, and it's scary and it's dangerous. And it's dangerous that the Secret Service is telling President Trump that they can't secure him if he has an open campaign event. That's a threat. It's getting. You really have to understand what time it is. And I wrote this essay, what time it is. I'm sorry, I'm going to plug this in so I don't kind of lose connection with you. This is the late stage of a coup. I mean, this is literally a coup. Another thing I want to call your attention to, if you can see me, there's not really a good light source, is the language of, and this has to be verified, right? It has to be confirmed on the White House website, but if it's confirmed, it's very serious. Laura Loomer posted that there was a delegation of powers memo about Ukrainian matters. I didn't see it on whitehouse.gov, so it's not confirmed. But the delegation of powers, according to her, was to the State Department, the Department of Energy, which is very weird, and one more department, which I don't recall. So that needs to be confirmed. Excuse me, it's probably not constitutional anyway, right? I don't think they can just delegate the president's job. But we need to confirm it because of this vacuum, because right now we literally don't know, because there's clearly a fight, right? There's a fight between, and I predicted this in my essay, Lady McBiden, on my Substack, but there's a fight between the supporters, the family really, and the supporters that are left of Mrs. Harris and President Biden. Probably Hunter Biden is in there in some disturbed way, versus the Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, like they're getting in line, but they're not done. They don't want Kamala. It's clear they're going to try to get probably Newsom or Mrs. Clinton or Mrs. Obama, in there as the nominee. But how can I put it? Like, don't stop with the drama about, here, let me try to turn toward the light. Don't stop with the drama about who is going to be the president, who's going to be the vice president. That's not the extent of this power vacuum. This power vacuum goes to every agency, all the budgets, billions of dollars, who's going to be able to reward their friends, who's going to be able to get massive payoffs after they're in power from, the defense industry or the oil industry or the trial lawyers. I mean, everyone is scrambling. It's not just the people at the top. It's a distraction almost. It's bad that the people at the top are scrambling, but you've got to imagine scrambling happening up and down the chain of command in every agency, including the intelligence community, including in defense. So that's what I want to say about the coup. It's really bad. I mean, it's very serious. And what I'm very worried about the security fences that have gone up around Congress. I'm sorry, around the White House. Very worried. I believe they're around the Capitol as well. I'm very concerned about Palestinian protesters, quote unquote. They may well all be legitimate grassroots Palestinian protesters, but my husband, Brian O'Shea, has confirmed that there's a kind of dial-a-protest functionality on a website where you can just pay people to show up and wear T-shirts. But I'm concerned that there's people who could be anyone kind of amassing near the Capitol, right? I'm really worried about what's going on inside the Capitol. I think you guys have to understand that, when there was that hearing with Director Cheadle, of course, she's now resigned, of the Secret Service, people were so upset in Congress, and it was bipartisan, not just because they were upset about what looked like an almost successful assassination attempt against President Trump, but because the Secret Service secures them too. So our elected representatives are being intimidated. You've got to really understand that, to say to President Trump, for the Secret Service to say to President Trump, don't have outdoor events anymore, that's tantamount to threatening really all of Congress, right? I mean, right now, arguably, it's just Republicans. It's tantamount, like, you can read between the lines, we're not going to secure you either, Republican leaders. But this, whoever is steering one of the two coups, they could threaten, Democrats who don't get in line. They could threaten Democrats who don't keep funding Ukraine, or whatever it is they want, right? So you've got to understand how serious it is. I'm going to repeat again what I said in my last podcast like this. It is so bad that Senator Johnson was given 4 questions to ask the FBI and the Secret Service initially, and then the FBI said, you can go ahead and FOIA the rest. That is so bad. It is so bad that Director Cheadle was clearly assigned to be the fall lady, take the fall, but stonewall, and then lose her job. They're still stonewalling. I mean, those are not answers. What that means, you've got to understand, is that there's impunity, that our members of Congress are no longer in charge. Our senators are no longer in charge. They are being ignored. They're being disregarded. There's no accountability. Like, the power has shifted, and the Secret Service, the FBI, maybe the intelligence community, it's really not clear to me who, that coup consists of, right? Except that it's not our elected representatives, and it's too sloppy just to say the deep state, respectfully. But in the past, they've at least responded or had to respond when Congress asked them questions or subpoenaed them. And now you're just seeing, what really worries me is you're seeing a strategy of a short term game. In other words, something's going to happen. That means that these people don't have fear that they'll be prosecuted. They don't have fear that they'll be investigated. Um, and and that's what really worries me. And add to that the millions of people who have come into our border under Kamala Harris's oversight, by the way. I think that's really germane. I mean, if you're wondering, why do I feel like a treasonous entity has gotten hold of our country, think about the fact that, she's been made fun of, she's been belittled, but it's pretty serious. Maybe she wasn't just bad at being border czar. Maybe she was really good at it, doing what the people who want to take down the United States wanted her to do, which has let in 30 million people, many of them terrorists or associated with terrorist regimes, according to J.J. Carroll, my husband's co-host on Unrestricted Invasion. Maybe that's exactly what she was supposed to do during these 4 years. Maybe it's not like, oh, sorry, I wasn't very good at keeping the border closed. Maybe it was like, I did exactly what I was told to do. I did exactly what I was chosen to do by the people who want to take down the United States of America. So now I'm going to pivot to how not to run against Kamala Harris. And that's best case scenario, if things remain stable enough so that, and I think they're in flux, right? I don't think the coup is complete. As I've said, people think democracy ends overnight and that suddenly it's like black shirts or brown shirts goose stepping in the streets all over the country, but that's not how democracies end. Often there's, fascism over here, but vestiges of democracy and free speech over here. And it can take years for a democracy to die or a fascist regime to get fully established. So that's where I think we are right now. So best case scenario, the people who are trying to just lock down the United States of America in a fascist, regime are not yet successful. Ideally, because there's infighting. I mean, one of my favorite quotes from my husband is, you have to use monsters to fight monsters. So right now the monsters are battling it out. And that's actually a blessing, because it means that there are multiple agendas that are warring. And so we still have a chance to get our country back, but it's very serious. So switching to the best case scenario. Best case scenario is that things will stabilize enough to have a campaign, that there won't be a dirty bomb or a terrorist attack or a complete takedown of the grid, like with a CrowdStrike trial balloon. I'm thoroughly expecting that will happen before November. But assuming there is a campaign and that people get to cast their votes and the votes are counted, you guys have to pass our election integrity bill. Okay, it's on the upper right-hand corner of Daily Clout, and send it to your elected officials, assuming they're still able to legislate, and get it passed at a state level too, because you need paper ballots, same-day voting, voter ID in order to have a chance of having the vote be counted correctly in November. But assuming that the country stabilizes, here's what I'm seeing Republican commentators doing that they shouldn't do. And again, I'm not partisan, but I don't, I don't think it's partisan to say at this point, either Trump or RFK Jr. is a better choice for this country than the Democrats, because they're so thoroughly not even being members of a republic anymore. So having said that, Republican men, especially on social media, certainly, and to some extent in speeches, including the vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, they're saying some dumb things, respectfully. And I'm giving this advice as someone who cares about the Republican success at this point. And both parties tend to do this, right? Both parties tend to think that everyone agrees with them. And so they tend to say things that reflect the views of their echo chamber. Democrats do it too. That's when I was an advisor for Democrats, I kept saying, not everyone agrees with you about abortion. Some people think abortion is murder. Not everyone is secular. Some people are religious. Some people are small business owners. Not everyone thinks that, all businesses are evil capitalism. Don't be anti-military. Some people are members of the military. I mean, that was my constant refrain, to drag the kind of blinderedness of leftism into messaging that appealed to moderates as well. And that's so important. And it's always difficult, right? And it's fascinating to me why it's always difficult for both sides. It's difficult because it goes against human nature and psychology, because people, in order to create messaging for a campaign that appeals to enough people to get elected, they have to not say what they believe all the time. I don't mean lie, but they have to imagine what it's like to not agree with themselves, right? They have to it's an exercise in compassion and imagination, right? You have to imagine, if I thought abortion was murder, how would I talk about reproductive rights? Or, if I had a loved one in the military, how would I craft a message that doesn't insult people in the military? And that's really a good exercise. And so bringing it over to the Republicans, I see with the coronation of Vice President Harris as the, assigned nominee, that right away Republican men especially are making bad mistakes that they should not make. One of them is that they tried to say that she's a DEI hire, and they're going to try to do this. That's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. She might be a DEI hire, and I recognize that you could make the argument, people are making it, that President Biden himself called her a DEI hire because he said it's so important to have a woman and to have a woman of color. You can be right. How can I put this? Someone can be right or score points in a college debate, and it's still a losing message if you want to win a presidential campaign. And that's how I hear these discussions about Mrs. Harris being a DEI candidate. You don't need to, how can I put it? It's kind of a racist thing to say, even if it's true, right? Because you could make the case that the fact that, 90+% of our Senate is white men is also a DEI hire, right? Or you could make the case that the fact that Bush Jr. was a legacy kid who basically inherited his chance from his dad to be president, or, any of the dynasties, right? You could say that they're the equivalent of DEI hires, right? You could, it gets you into, something you really learn being a successful political consultant. And I was a successful political consultant. I advised a successful Clinton reelection campaign. And then I advised Vice President Gore, and he won the popular vote. He didn't win the Electoral College, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. But arguably, that was a successful campaign. As successful as Bush's campaign. The point is, you don't want to get drawn in a campaign message into rabbit holes that are messy, right? And the whole isn't she a DEI hire? That's such a rabbit hole, because you could certainly make those claims, but it makes people sound racist. It does. And you could say up and down the country, it's not racist to say it. Like my husband, we have these arguments all the time. My husband would say it's not racist. That kind of doesn't matter. You're appealing, respectfully, darling Brian, something can be a reasonable position. It's not provable. You can't prove that she's a DEI hire, A. B, it's insulting. right? Even if it's true, what people really have to understand about good campaign messaging is something can be true and stupid, or true and a losing message. I think I've kind of said that before, but it bears saying all the time. And so what I mean by that is you're really not, your target really isn't that person, your opponent. Your target is really winning over millions of voters of all kinds, from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all races, all sexualities, all genders, etc., or both genders. And so when you say she's a DEI hire, I think the majority of the country is not white at this point. And many votes that Republicans need to win are Black women, or women, certainly women, suburban women. And I can't say enough that no, and I will say this for the next 4 months because people really have to listen to it. The math of winning a presidential campaign is that neither side can win on their base alone, right? You cannot win just getting the votes of your base. You can't. It is numerically impossible. Neither side can do it. That's why the only people who can be elected also appeal to independents and swing voters, right? Especially that crucial slice, demographic slice, without which no one's going to win, which is suburban white women who tend to be independent. Okay, you need that to win. You cannot win with the Christian vote. You can't win with a pro-gun vote. And this is on both sides. The Democrats can't win with just the abortion rights lobby or the trial lawyers. They need the swing vote. Both sides need the swing vote. So if you need the swing vote, you need people to vote for you who might feel like they are constantly being dismissed because they're women, or told that they only got to where they got to because they're women, right? Or because they're Black or Latino, right? And you need those voters. So what I would say if I was advising the Republicans, which I'm not, is don't go near that. It is just a loser. It's a loser, and it makes you look racist. You're always talking about how you don't evaluate people on the basis of their color. Well, maybe the Democrats evaluated her on the basis of her color or her gender, but don't do it, right? Show that you're better than that and attack her on her merits. Attack her on her record. And that's how you show that you respect women and you respect people of color, right? And that you're not treating them differently because they're people of color or because they're women. There are plenty of juicy targets on her merits, on her record. And if I was advising the Republicans, I would say single out safety, right? That whoever did the RNC was pitch perfect almost for women and swing voters. And one of their themes was safety. So if I were advising how to win against Vice President Harris, which is a much tougher situation than winning against Biden, I'm just going to say. And I think the Republicans are really underestimating that because they don't respect her, but they don't understand the symbolic power of the possibly first female president. And it's not nothing. It may be nothing to the, like stoically gender neutral hard right, but it's very meaningful to the independent women that you need in order to win, right? And there are no women on President Trump's ticket. I don't think that's a mistake, but it means that he has a much bigger mountain to climb now than he did with President Biden, an older white man, right, who brought even less to the table. But you don't want to you want to run on safety. So I would stress the fact that she put all these Black men in prison for drug charges, minority drug charges. So that's really big. People hated her in California when she was doing that, and that's not a pro-drug thing to point out. It's a she's bad at law and order thing, right? And I would highlight the clips, which the Trump team is starting to do. They're smarter than a lot of commentators, but they're not perfect. I would highlight her being soft on crime, defunding the police most recently in her role as vice president. And I would definitely put the mess at the border right in her lap. And I would hammer that, hammer that, hammer that, hammer that, the mess at the border. I wouldn't bother with the word salad stuff. It's just random. I would just literally two talking points, law and order, mess at the border. And they reinforce each other. And then I would talk about to level out the advantage she has or the appeal she has as the first woman, possibly the first woman president. I would stress that everyone who talks about law and order and the open borders, and President Trump did this really well at the RNC, everyone did, talk about the risk to women and children. That women are not safe in America because of the open border. Women are not safe because of the open border. And I would talk about violent crime against women. I would talk about make America safe again, and that she endangered women. That's what I would do. I would say she locked up men of color and she endangered women. That's what I would do until November. Over and over and over. And substantively, this DI stuff has got to go. I don't want to hear it anymore. It's like literally, it's painful for me to see conservatives and Republicans, whom I am, very enthusiastic about in many ways right now, shooting themselves in the foot, thinking everyone agrees with them about this. Everyone doesn't agree with them. And the other thing I want to talk about is her personal life. Okay. I experienced something very unpleasant on social media yesterday. And what it was I pointed out that people that it's not a winning message to suggest that Mrs. Harris slept her way to the top. And what got me to talk about that was Vice President nominee J.D. Vance said something like a really bad soundbite in my view. Something like, "What have you ever done except collect a check?" Bad. It sounded racist. It sounded sexist. And it also alienated the 30 million Americans who work for the US government, including police officers and firefighters and public school teachers and nurses in public hospitals. They collect a check from the United States government. So that's one of those sound bites that if I were advising the Republicans, I would say, just don't do that. Like, people who run businesses are no better than people who work hard every day, and collect a check from the government, like our military. So don't do that. You don't have to. And the "what have you ever done," even if Mrs. Harris is the worst professional woman in the world, no woman watching who's a professional woman wants to hear a white man, I'll just say it, a white man, say to a woman who has been attorney general, who's been the vice president of the United States, as badly as you may think she's done, no woman wants to hear a white man say, "What have you ever done?" To a 60-year-old professional woman. I mean, it's like, that's not an argument. That's just a bunch of biases. It doesn't prove anything. So, and the other thing is the "what have you ever done," in addition to kind of being racist, kind of invoking, Ronald Reagan's welfare queen language, which didn't play particularly well, except with his base. It also evokes rumors that Mrs. Harris slept her way to the top. Like, "What have you ever done? You're only attorney general because you slept your way to the top. You're only vice president because you slept your way to the top." It's a bad echo. It's bad. And then I had this very unpleasant, I think, misogynist argument with a bunch of people on Twitter, which is why I'm taking to this to respond to it. Even if you think she had a relationship with Willie Brown in San Francisco, and he said in his autobiography that he helped her with her campaign, which is on the record, this is what I would say to that. A, it's one ex-lover claiming credit for her career. And any woman watching this can confirm that one ex-lover can say all kinds of things that aren't true. B, it's just sexist because, any man, there's so many men in Congress or in the Senate who have married wealthy women, like the Hines marriage, right? And I think that's Romney, right? And we don't say, oh, he slept his way to a fortune. We just don't. Once again, it's also sexualizing her instead of, which I'm going to say, like, yes, I come from the left, but I am persuaded about this. Black women are sexualized, just like black men are sexualized in ways that white women aren't. And white women and black women are sexualized in ways that white men are not. And so to, to imply that penumbra of she slept her way to the top, it again makes every professional woman in America feel like, oh, they're just going to treat me and women like me the way that my, gross bosses have treated me, attributing my success to my looks or to my sexuality, which I will tell you happens all day long. And it's a no-win situation. I wrote a book called The Beauty Myth about this. If you're too attractive, they say you didn't get it on your own merits. And if you're not attractive enough, you get criticized for that too. So it's all about not treating her meritocratically. I also found it a little bit gross, and it's one source, right? It's one source. I also found it a little bit gross that people just enjoyed, like, invoking the scenario of this woman on her knees engaging in sexual favors for trade-offs. And if you guys can have those thoughts, I'm not going to censor you, or whoever's out there thinks that that's fun to do. But I am telling you, as a campaign message, even implied, like, what have you ever done? The subtext is accepted, right? It will backfire. We are tired of this. The swing voters are professional women. Black women are disproportionately professional women, working women. They get this garbage all day, every day, in the workplace, from their bosses, sometimes from their colleagues. It's not attractive. And it's not an argument. And so Republicans, and again, disproportionately, I'm seeing Republican men do this because no doubt Republican women know how unpleasant this is. If you think that saying, oh, she's a DI hire, or, she slept her way to the top is a winning message, or even implying it, or what have you ever done, right? It's not a winning message. It's alienating. It backfires. Now, and people are saying rightly, if you want to look at people's personal lives, Trump has been unfaithful. He had sex with a porn star, allegedly, on and on and on. He had that famous quote about grabbing women by the pussy, and I thoroughly believe that people's personal life is, if it's consensual and with adults, is none of our business. I don't, support adultery. I am faithful, but people are, some commentator put it, she's grown, unless you're going to have a complete single standard for men and women, which I think would be a bad idea and a waste of time anyway. Really what people do in their personal lives consensually is none of our business when it comes to governing. And this is a failure, honestly, of Americans, especially. We're very puritanical. And I said this during the Clinton, everyone was upset that Clinton had an affair with an intern. It wasn't ideal from an EOC point of view. And arguably there was a power imbalance. But I was one of the few feminists who said, this is nobody's business. If she consented, it's nobody's business. You guys cannot imagine the pressures that, I'm not saying it's okay, but if you want your country governed well, being president or vice president is so hard on families. It's so hard on marriages. Being under scrutiny for every single thing you do is so debilitating. People need privacy, if they're going to run the country well. And, arguably, and, again, if we were to look into the personal lives of every single member of Congress, no one who, as Jesus said, he who is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. So those of you who think that by implying that Mrs. Harris got where she got by sleeping with Willie Brown, who, by the way, is not that big a deal. He's really not. He was like a San Francisco power broker. I grew up in San Francisco. She became attorney general of the whole state, right? It's not going to play well. It's again, if you want to win over swing voters, or what I call, the Deborah effect, if you want to win over people like my mom, a thoughtful liberal who's open-minded, focusing on kind of the slut factor, which is again unverified, and every woman has dealt with it. And by the way, lots of powerful men claim to have slept with attractive women and haven't. Okay, that also happens. But it's just going to remind liberal women and independent women about this very unpleasant feeling they have that Republicans are kind of male dominated and want to intrude on their personal lives when it comes to things like abortion. And you guys kind of had a blessing. Republicans had a blessing kind of handed to them by the end of Roe v. Wade and the return of the abortion issue to the states. It took a giant Democratic advantage in presidential politics off the table. So why stir it up again? Things are where they should be. The states are deciding the issue. Leave it alone and stay away from women's uteruses and their sex lives. Just stay away from the sex lives of women. It's none of your business. The last thing I want to address, because someone I respect a lot named Jordan Schachtel, a commentator named Jordan Schachtel, put this out on Twitter this morning, is her family life. So she doesn't have kids. To me, this, and Jordan Schachtel brought this up as a negative against her. Again, I would say don't go there. Just don't go there. Lots of women and men desperately wanted kids and are infertile. She's a stepmom. I can say as a stepmom, that's a real job. It's a real relationship. It's a real role. There are many 21st century families that vote. People are in families that are not married to each other, but living together. People are step families. People are foster families. A lot of people don't have kids, but they vote. They have cats or dogs, right? I mean, a lot of people live alone. It's sad, arguably, but it's a society of, I think, 40 or 50% of households are single people living alone. So why alienate all those single people or childless people by a personal attack? So I guess my theme throughout this rant is that personal attacks based on race or gender, sexual lives, projected sexual lives, imagined sexual lives, fantasized sexual lives, are not going to play well. They're going to backfire. And what I'll say over and over and over again is the people whom you need to vote for President Trump don't think like you. They don't share your assumptions. They don't share your rhetoric. They don't share your worldview. And there are so many things they do share with most Republicans if you focus and create a tight message based on those things. You can't get decent infrastructure or decent supplies for your schools or decent treatment at the VA hospital because of 30 million non-Americans that Mrs. Harris personally let in over the border. Everyone whom you need to vote for you, most of them will agree with that, right? They'll be moved by that. She made our cities less safe. People will be moved by that, right? Every woman who takes the subway or worries about her kids taking the subway or taking public transportation or walking to school will be moved by that safety and security. She made our country less safe because she covered up cognitive decline. That's a winning issue. People don't like being lied to, whatever their background. But, these wedge issues, the trans stuff, it's not, it's great for the base. It's a red herring. Like, it's serious. Sexualizing children, the trans issue is one, it's a discussion we can have, not for a political campaign, for presidency. And something everyone has to understand, if you want to win, is a winning presidential campaign, you're not going to get your whole wish list. You can't be like, holding your candidate to the fire if you don't like gay people and he says something nice about gay people, right? You just can't. You have to recognize that the president is president for everyone. And a message of unity is the winning message. That's why it was so exciting to hear that unity was the message at the RNC. And it was exciting to hear that President Trump called RFK Jr. and they talked about how to unite the country. That will play well, right? That the things that scare all of us, the economy, right? That will play well. But again, these marginal personal issues, these race-based, gender-based personal attacks do not play well. They're not worthy of you. And, we're in such a crisis right now. We really do need people to unite the country as well as these are my 2 cents based on years of experience about how to run a winning presidential campaign. Now I'm kind of batting for the other team. So you can take my experience advising Democrats and see if it's useful for Republicans. But I'm telling you, I'm warning about these missteps because I do see Republicans making the same mistakes over and over. And I am sympathetic to the Republican many issues in the Republican agenda right now. I don't want people to make stupid mistakes if the country's well-being is at stake. All right. Many useful questions. I can only chat for a few more minutes because I have to go somewhere, but so many useful questions. Kathy says, I agree with you. Thank you for your bravery to speak out. The deep state has embedded themselves over decades in the nation and now feels that they are too big to fail, but the people are waking up. I agree with you, Kathy. And on a happier note, this crisis could really provide an opportunity for people of goodwill from all races and backgrounds and political persuasions to unite as Americans. I hope it does. And Janie Saish says, leaders need to stay above the fray. Memers and lowbrow accounts should carry the gutter messages to fight against the gutter messages of the competitors. I hear you. I personally don't really agree. I don't think gutter to gutter really works. I think pivoting to, like, if a bot or a troll says, President Trump is a rapist, the response should be, 4 years of peace and prosperity, 2016 to 2020. I mean, just pivot to, it's called Hit Bridge Sparkle. This is one of the best things I ever teach anyone about communications. It was taught to me by the best media consultant in America at that time, who trained me early on in my career. So it means that if you're hit with a negative attack, you don't ignore it, you meet it, you address it, and then you transition to where you sparkle to what you really do want to talk about, your best evidence, your best proof. And 4 years of peace and prosperity, no wars. If I were writing Republican talking points, I would just have President Trump say, no wars, no wars, no wars. We didn't send your kids overseas, no wars, no wars. Think about what it was like grocery shopping from 2016 to 2020 versus now. Think about what it was like filling up your car, 2016 to 2020 now. Think about how safe you felt. That's all he needs to do. One of the smartest things he and his team said is, you don't have to imagine a Trump presidency. Just think back to those years. They were good years. That's what I would do when there's a gutter attack. Thomas Campbell says, you have to teach Republicans how to not be racist and how to be compassionate. Wow, speaks volumes, RIP Republicans. Well, Thomas Campbell, that's an interesting observation, but sadly, I feel that Democrats have to be taught not to be racist and how to be compassionate right now, too. I mean, both sides are really being disgusting. They're not treating anyone. I mean, when people treat people from the left on the basis of race or gender or sexuality, they're not manifesting Dr. Martin Luther King's vision. So both sides need to do better. The woman is trying to buy groceries and they see the price of goods rising, so they feel how different things are in Biden, Kathy says, or with Biden. I agree with you on that. I think that's very powerful. And let's see, let's hear from someone. Oh God. Activism Schmactivism says, just because she's a floozy with no substance, don't actually say it. Again, I'm going to say, as I did probably fruitlessly on Twitter the day before yesterday, what evidence? What evidence do we have? We have one former lover who is 40 years older, some ridiculous age difference, than this attractive young woman who had an affair with him. He is claiming that he was responsible for her success. I cannot tell you how many attractive women that happens to. We have one source for that. So, I'm just going to say till the cows come home, what's a floozy? It's a losing argument. All of us have a past, right? And if you ever want good leadership in this country, you need to stop going over everyone's sexual past or drug past. I'm not kidding. RFK Jr. has said, and it was smart of him to get it all out there, that he was a sex addict, very promiscuous. Okay, is he a floozy? It's no one's business. If you want good leadership, just back away from the bedroom. Seriously, it's nobody's business. And you're going to keep trashing good leaders over and over and over because they don't live up to some standard that, 60% of Americans don't live up to. So it's gross, and you really need to rethink it. I mean, definitely go after trafficking or, minors or Epstein type people, but leave consensual sex alone, or literally there will always be a double standard keeping you from having good women in leadership, much more even than good men. Okay, John Kerry slept his way to become Heinz King. You could say that, right? Like you could do that to any relationship. Oh, who's getting what from whom? Maybe she liked him, And I will also say, can we just be in 2024? Sometimes people who are having a relationship help each other, because like maybe he thought she was smart and therefore helped her career and wanted to sleep with her, right? I mean, it's not okay. He was married. It's not okay, but people are condemning her and not condemning him, and I just think it's so reductive and dumb. And it's what they want you to do. They want you to focus on these nasty insinuations and fantasies rather than showcase with a principled dignity and gentlemanlike behavior her record. All right. Bill Trask says, so Naomi, who are you going to vote for and why? Well, I really can't endorse because Daily Cloud is, again, supposed to be nonpartisan. I've kind of gone off the reservation a bit with this kind of outright alarm about the Democrats being so treasonous. But I can't say who I'm going to vote for, but I can say I'm not going to vote for the Democrats because they're not serving America anymore. And atavism, schmatavism says, and this person is absolutely right, the Marxist ideology she espouses is reason enough to be as ruthless as possible politically in opposing her. Thomas Campbell said, I wish the Republican Party embodied your spirit again. They have lost it. Maybe they'll listen. Let's see, citizens of the Republic. I think that what society will find is that men are following the path of Atlas Shrugged. You don't have to like them, but they support your life here in America. I'm not really sure what that means, but thank you. Used to be disgusted, tries to stay amused. When people tell me not to say something, it only makes me want to talk about it more, but thanks anyway. Guys, I'm not telling you what to say in private, and I'm not even telling you what to say in public. I'm just saying, do you want to win? I'm so tired of seeing the same mistakes over and over. Do you want to win? If you want to win, and I used to say this to Democrats, have some discipline. It's called message discipline. Stay on message, because only by staying on message will you reassure women who have been conditioned to see you all as sexist pigs and racist pigs that you're not sexist and racist pigs. I'm being as frank as I can. Be gentlemanly, be ladylike, stick to the record, and you will be able to win. If you care so much about President Trump, help him. You're not helping him by going into the gutter like this. Have some message discipline. And I'm speaking to the Republicans as well. And JD Vance, for sure. I know the vice president is supposed to be an attack dog, but there's a way to attack, right? Stick to her record. Attack with dignity. Brett Fensky says modern feminism has completely torn apart the fabric of Western culture, and yet she still wants to continue promoting this garbage. You know what? I'm so worn out. Take it or leave it. I am trying to save our country by offering for free the kind of advice that I was paid a lot of money for 2 presidential campaigns, and take it or leave it. I am telling you that a lot of women don't think like you and your friends. You can believe me or not, but if you want President Trump to win, you need to take this seriously. And a lot of people of color don't think that an attack on someone being a DEI hire is a principled attack, right? It's a lowbrow attack. Take it or leave it. And I'm not making this case because I have anything to gain for it, except I don't want to see my country lost. Let's see. Pfizer League Monkey Business. Eden. Hi, Eden. This guy's really important. Looking forward to interviewing you soon, Eden. Eden broke some really major stories, and most recently broke a really important story it's Eden Bieber, about CrowdStrike. And he made the case, which is incontrovertible, that it couldn't have been an accident because of the QA process in technology. So he gave me a gold star. Thank you, Eden, and says, thank you for your wise advice. Does pointing out Kamala Harris' record in California is something the Republicans should emphasize or not? I think definitely. People literally hated her. Communities of color hated her. She ruined people's lives. She trafficked African-American men. I mean, she created a prison industrial complex. And I think they have to do it carefully because, the message is about law and order, but you could easily make the case that she's part of the destruction of the best state in the union, that has carried on with Gavin Newsom. And remind people, that she doesn't behave with the rule of law in mind or justice in mind. She locked up, poor populations of color for disproportionate racist reasons, and now she's flipping and saying defund the police. So that I would make that campaign ad. Absolutely, it shows a complete lack of principle. Flip-flop, as we said in one of the campaigns in the early 2000s, as I recall. The Republicans cannot win with this who is doing who mindset, says MBW. I agree. And you're a breath of fresh air. Dr. Wolf, thank you, says take me with you, .eth. And MBW says, you are exactly right about this, exclamation point. So I'll end there because I have to get to somewhere else. As much as I enjoy talking to you, thank you for listening. Please spread the word. We're in very dire times. Just because she's a floozy with no substance, don't actually say it. I'm sorry. That's so wrong. And yet so funny. I'm sorry. It's like we don't have to all go back to the frat house, right? And so I'll sign off there. Take it or leave it, as I said. I don't have a stake in this outcome except wanting not to live in a complete tyranny and be locked up in a quarantine camp. So, and also, our democratic principles and Dr. King's vision that we should assess people on the basis of their character is a really precious one. It's part of what makes America beautiful. And to end on a high note, there was so much of that. People of all colors and walks of life and, socioeconomic backgrounds all together as Americans at the RNC. So that's the high note that we should end on. And also the tone that RFK Jr. tends to strike. It's It's to rise above and unite. And we need that now. We need to save our country. All right. Signing off, you can help us if you like this commentary and analysis and our hard-hitting independent journalism on Daily Clout and my journalism on Outspoken on Substack. You can help by becoming subscribers or donors on either site. And you can help by supporting our sponsors, getnativepath.com/daily clout, this unbelievable collagen product that will make you want to leap around and feel good and fight nonstop for a better world. I can't support it enough. I can't recommend it enough. And our other sponsors as well are listed on our site. And when you support our sponsors, you support our independent journalism. So please do. Getnativepath.com/daily clout and dailyclout.io. You can donate or support us there, and my Substack, Outspoken. And you can talk to me on Twitter, Naomi R. Wolf. Thank you all, and please consider what I shared here. Take care. Bye-bye.